Bloomberg thought they struck gold with Meghan Markle. Royal connections, global fame, a name that screamed influence, it all looked like the perfect headline. They pictured an elegant conversation, the kind that would sparkle with intelligence and charm their high-powered audience. But what unfolded instead left insiders stunned, whispering that the network had made one of its biggest missteps yet. The moment Meghan walked into the studio, it became clear this wasn't the royal win they had promised. Her flawless posture, polished look, and that carefully practiced smile fooled no one once the cameras rolled, because the second she opened her mouth, the magic collapsed. Not with scandalous remarks, but with something far worse: empty. Viewers expecting insight, leadership, and raw perspective were handed empty buzzwords and PR-friendly cliches. It didn't feel like an interview. It felt like a performance, and a hollow one at that. For Bloomberg, a platform that prides itself on razor-sharp dialogue with CEOs, presidents, and the world's most brilliant minds, this was nothing short of embarrassing. One staff member didn't sugarcoat it. She dragged the show down. Not with drama, not with controversy, but with boredom. They needed electricity, and what they got was dead air wrapped in a designer dress. Inside the control room, the silence was louder than applause. Instead of nods, there were sighs. Instead of admiration, there were side eyes and quiet head shakes. The entire segment felt like a misfire start to finish. Meghan didn't bring spark or charisma. She brought something heavier: the weight of pre-rehearsed answers, mechanical smiles, and sound bites with no soul. And the audience noticed instantly. Social media erupted, not with outrage, but with confusion. Memes, sarcastic tweets, fans asking the same question: what did we just watch? Why was she even there? One viewer blasted on Twitter. Another compared the interview to a beauty pageant contestant, dodging serious questions with a miscongeniality smile. And let's be real, when your audience walks away calling your star guest robotic and lifeless, that's not just disappointing, it's a red flag. Bloomberg didn't get the ratings bump they gambled on. The numbers came in flat. For a network that lives and dies by metrics, the outcome was brutal. They had banked on Meghan driving headlines, pulling advertisers, and sparking buzz. But instead of momentum, what they got was silence, or worse, backlash. By the end, it felt like Meghan hadn't just failed to move the needle. She might have pushed it in the wrong direction, and the contrast made everything sting harder. Bloomberg has hosted world leaders, visionary CEOs, voices that shake entire industries. When those guests speak, you can feel the weight in the room. They challenge ideas, they deliver truths. Meghan? She recycled the same tired talking points, misunderstood narratives, vague mentions of injustice, and a glossy Hollywood spin that everyone's already heard too many times before. No boldness, no authenticity, just another carefully packaged performance selling a brand that fewer and fewer people are interested in buying. And that's the larger problem. The Meghan Markle brand itself seems to be running on fumes. Even platforms that once welcomed her with open arms are beginning to back away quietly. Because when every appearance feels less like content and more like damage control, the cost outweighs the reward. Bloomberg learned that the hard way. Insiders say it wasn't just the dull delivery, it was the mismatch. Bloomberg thrives on credibility, data, and hard analysis. Their guests are expected to contribute ideas that cut deep. Meghan, instead, seemed more focused on polishing her image than engaging in real dialogue. And that disconnect turned the entire setup into an uncomfortable spectacle. From the inside, it felt less like a strategic booking and more like a vanity stunt, and that perception carries weight. Producers reportedly began questioning why this decision was ever greenlit. Some claim red flags were raised long before she arrived, but her star power steamrolled every doubt. The assumption was simple: Meghan's name alone would guarantee impact. But in a space as cutthroat as Bloomberg's, name recognition without substance just doesn't cut it anymore. The irony? Meghan clearly wanted the opposite outcome. She expected admiration, maybe even reverence. But what she walked into was cool professionalism on camera, followed by whispered regret the moment the segment wrapped. Instead of owning the room, she drained it. One staffer summed it up: she didn't just underdeliver, she made everything about herself. And that's the recurring theme with Meghan's media appearances. What should be dialogue turns into monologue. What should be informative feels promotional. We've seen this pattern before: Spotify, a multi-million-dollar deal that crashed and burned. Executives mocked her publicly for lacking creativity. They felt played. Audiences felt cheated, and now Bloomberg joins the list of platforms burned by the hype cycle. The story is becoming predictable. The rollout is always glossy, the anticipation is always sky-high, and then silence, or worse, disappointment. Meghan continues to secure powerful opportunities, but too often she leaves smoldering ruins in her wake. That's the problem Bloomberg is grappling with. This wasn't just one forgettable guest spot, it was a blow to their editorial judgment. And in an industry where credibility is currency, mistakes like this echo. Other networks are paying attention, executives are whispering, and the conclusion they're drawing is damning. Meghan Markle is no longer a safe booking. She's a risk. The backlash stems from the predictability too. Meghan leaned on the same recycled narrative. Misunderstood, unfairly judged, rising above the noise. But this time the audience didn't buy it. They'd heard it all before. It landed like a rerun. No urgency, no spark, just polished victimhood, wrapped in couture and delivered with detachment. And the final blow? This wasn't even a royal interview. Bloomberg didn't invite her to rehash palace drama or family feuds. They wanted insight, they expected relevance. Bloomberg expected a voice of depth, someone ready to weigh in on issues that truly matter on a global scale. But instead, the entire segment spiraled into a performance about Meghan herself, the way she looked, the way she answered, the aura she tried to project. Nothing else seemed to matter, not the questions, not the dialogue. Just that kind of self-focus might play on red carpets or lighthearted talk shows, but in serious media spaces, it backfires because here people don't tune in for branding, they tune in for truth, clarity, and real insight. Meghan delivered none of it. And the backlash was swift. Viewers weren't just unimpressed, they were vocal. Social media lit up with memes mocking how out of touch she seemed. Posts spread comparing the interview to watching paint dry. The reaction wasn't outrage, it was boredom. And in the world of media, boredom is far more dangerous. Because boredom means irrelevance. But what sealed the damage wasn't the memes, it was the silence that followed. Bloomberg issued no defense, no statement, no spin. Nothing. And that silence spoke volumes. Insiders quietly confirmed what the audience had already sensed. The network saw the entire booking as a mistake, and not just a minor blunder, but a reputational scar that raised bigger questions about editorial judgment. Because the truth is, Meghan Markle isn't adding value anymore. Not to platforms that want weight and credibility, this moment wasn't isolated, it was part of a growing trend, a trail of opportunities that ended in letdowns, Spotify, Netflix fatigue, and now Bloomberg. The pattern is clear, the hype is loud, but the delivery hollow, and the world is starting to ask how many more platforms will risk it all before they finally say enough. From Oprah to Spotify to Netflix, the pattern has become impossible to ignore. A flashy debut, massive hype, carefully staged branding, and then the unraveling. Every time it's no longer controversial, it's predictable, and that's the real danger. When a brand becomes synonymous with disappointment, audiences stop watching, and networks stop calling. That's why the Bloomberg fallout cut deeper than usual. It wasn't quiet, it was public. Critics tore it apart. Analysts dissected every awkward moment. Rival platforms even used it as a warning. Meghan didn't just lose face with one network, she lost credibility with an entire class of media. Because Bloomberg isn't a gossip blog. It's a global institution, and if they walked away regretting ever giving her a seat at the table, the ripple effect is deafening. And then comes the money. These bookings aren't favors. Networks spend resources on star guests expecting returns. Ratings, buzz, ad revenue. But none of that came. The segment fizzled instantly. Clips didn't trend, shares didn't spread, critics didn't celebrate. The data stayed flat, and in a world built on numbers, flat equals failure. Behind closed doors, producers weren't just reviewing the segment, they were reevaluating Meghan herself. One insider summed it up brutally: "We thought we were getting a cultural icon. What we got was a walking press release." That single line captured the disappointment perfectly. Meghan didn't show up ready to converse, she showed up ready to sell, and the audience saw straight through it. Worse, the public's patience has worn thin. Many of the same voices who once rallied behind Meghan during her early royal battles now sound exhausted. The common reaction isn't hate. The repeated performance of rehearsed vulnerability, the vague grievances, the contradictions, the constant reframing of her story without accountability, it no longer lands. And the industry is noticing. Editorial boards are second-guessing future invites. Booking departments are weighing risk. The question echoing in media circles is no longer when can we get Meghan, but is she worth it at all? Even within royal circles, the fallout has been quietly telling. Her choices continue to push her further from the dignity of the crown she once represented. Every platform she touches becomes another stage. Not for service, not for dialogue, but for performance. And each performance chips away at what little legacy remains. For Bloomberg, the regret wasn't just about a bad interview. It was about buying into a myth that no longer holds power. Meghan's once glittering shine has faded, and what's left is a hollow brand polished on the outside but empty at the core. So the question is, after Bloomberg, who's willing to risk being next?